All right, everybody. I think we'll go ahead and start. We had a couple more panelists join, so we've got quite a few of our panelists, and we have a number of attendees. Thank you, folks, for those of you that are attending. Um, just a quick opening here. This is, and I think it's about the fourth or fifth meeting of this truck regulation implementation group focused on the border. What we've been doing is we do have a number of panelists that are actually on our TRIG, the Truck Regulation Implementation Group panel. We have a number of panelists, and then we have a number of attendees that are able to listen in. At the moment, panelists are the folks that can participate in the discussion, but feel free to go ahead and drop something into chat. Otherwise, and if we have any time at the end, we may open up for attendees for questions or comments from attendees as well outside of the panel. As you see, here's our agenda for the day. Thank you very much, Ariana, for anticipating me there. We do have 2 to 3, hopefully 3 presentations that I think will be bringing some really good information to folks. And that's one of the things for you panelists that we do I want to try and discuss at the end of today's session. I hope that you got my email that I sent on Friday, kind of regarding how to proceed with this group. One of the main purposes of this group has been to try and provide input, information, assistance on how to best meet, or how to help you meet the requirements of the Advanced Clean Fleet regulations. There are other things that we may be able to do. And again, we can talk about that. I don't want to jump in too much right now. Bruce, my last name is a little wrong written. It's I'm sorry. I think on there. I am so very, very sorry about that, Rogelio. Okay, great. I don't know, Ariana, if you've got the presentation, can you change that? The spelling of Rogelio's I can't talk, last name from Ampact, please. He just dropped it into the chat. Um, it's the Z and the R are backwards. So if you can change it, please do. So it's AZ RATA.
ARZAT.
What did I see? Yes, it's in the chat. Thank you. All right. All right. So having said that, we will start with some really good presentations in a moment. First of all, there will be Arun Raju. He's from UC Riverside. They do a lot of research on things such as movement, goods movement, and so forth. That'll be, I think, very useful. San Diego Gas and Electric will have some really interesting information on some of their programs and planning and so forth. And then Rogelio from ANPAC being the freight movement association, not the Freight Movement Association, I'm sorry, the Manufacturers Association will give a presentation as well. Then there'll be a TRIG panel discussion, and as I said, if we have time, there will be a little open comment time. But having said that, I'm going to turn over for a minute to my co-host, and that is Jill. Do you have anything you would like to say to kind of start this off?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Bruce. Hi, and welcome, everyone. I just want to thank you all, participants, but also panelists. Thank you, Arun. Thank you, Rogelio. I'm sure that today's meeting is going to be quite interesting, as always. Hi, Tony. You too, because with these 3 discussions and presentations, we can move forward on what we've been doing in the past meeting. Trying to find collective solutions and challenges and how to address in the better way and smoothly, in a smooth possible way. We're eager to this conversation, and again, just thank you all for your participation and the continued collaboration from Carb and everybody here.
Thank you so much, Jill. Okay. And one last thing, I think, before we go on to our first presentation. Last meeting, at the end of the meeting, I asked, what folks on the panel might like to see. One of the requests that we had was regarding maybe having a presentation, really focusing on what like workers in the area were going to get out of this, or what impact it might have on them. We have a union representative from the electricians union that sits on our panel. We did try and reach out to her to do that, and we hadn't heard back. So we're not ignoring that request, that idea. We just didn't have any luck setting something up. So we will try and set something like that up for the next time. All right. Having said that, why don't we jump in? And also because I think we had one person join, one of the potential speakers join after I said this, but this applies for Arun, if it's Anderson or Chris, I forget, and for Rogelio. We'll leave it up to you if you want to operate your own presentation. You want to share your screen and operate your presentation, or we will do it for you. Rogelio, I don't think we've gotten yours. I could be wrong about
I
that.
have the latest update, but I think my team just sent a few minutes ago the latest version. So,
Excellent.
but I can do both. But if you would like me to share, I can do that.
Sweet. It might be easier at this point, and I know, Arun, you said you're going to share yours. So let's jump in then. And Arun Raju, UC Riverside, go ahead and take it away, please.
Thank you, Bruce. I think it's being shared by Ariana. So good morning, everyone. And I first want to start off by thanking CARB and the other TRIG folks for putting this together. I've been following this. I think this is a very important, crucial engagement process for a number of reasons, particularly because the border traffic poses, I think, a unique challenge when it comes to transition to zero-emission vehicles, whether that's battery electric or fuel cell electric vehicles. So I think this process helps get different perspectives and input. Well, first off, maybe I can talk a little bit about my background. I'm a research faculty member at what's called the Center for Environmental Research and Technology, CSERT, at UC Riverside. My research focuses primarily on sustainability, renewable fuels, electrification, transition to zero-emission vehicles, and renewable hydrogen. On today's talk, I'm going to be focusing on a particular research project that we are currently engaged in, and it's actually sponsored by Alianza, UC Alianza, Mexico. And it builds on prior work we've done more for the inland region, kind of expanding that work to the border region and addressing some of the unique challenges there. And I'll get into the details of that project and what we have been doing and some of the challenges and maybe some of the opportunities and what kind of data we have been looking at. And what the recommendations that we will be making. Before I jump into the talk, CSERT is an interdisciplinary research center at UCR. It's the largest one at UC Riverside. We have about 150 people, including students. And we have been around for 32 years now, and a lot of our work is related to transportation, especially sustainable transportation, but there are groups working on air quality, climate change, atmospheric chemistry, and other areas. With that, we will jump into the presentation. Next slide, please. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the first few slides because I think probably most everyone in this audience and the panel know all these details. But just to provide a little bit of context, of course, we do have substantial amount of truck crossings, from Mexico to US and the other way around. And this is a big even a critical component of the economies, both in California and in Mexico. And the number of truck crossings is expected to go up. So we're only going to see more traffic in terms of the number of trucks. Next slide, please. And that, brings us to the transition to zero emission vehicles. And of course, Bruce is on the call, and others that, CARB helped put this together and are now helping with the implementation process. So the Advanced Clean Fleets rule requires that the priority fleets, which is either 50 or more vehicles or 50 million or more annual revenue, and then the government agencies are the first that are going to be transitioning. Without going into the specific numbers, there's you can just see the trend. There's going to be a steady increase. There's going to have to be a steady increase in the zero emission vehicles as we strive to meet these targets. And the goal with our own research is to help plan and implement this process smoothly, help address some of the open questions, the knowledge gaps, and then share that information with stakeholders, whether that's fleet owner operators or utilities or regulatory agencies or station builders. And then hopefully that'll help the process along. So my talk, I think, brings what I like to think of as a more academic perspective, a research perspective. Of course, different entities approach this from different perspectives. But this looks at some of the long-term planning questions and uses some advanced research tools to try to address those questions and try to figure out where the first station should go, what kind of capacities are needed, and what changes or adjustments to the current logistics setup would be needed to accommodate this transition, and also looking at the benefits to the community in terms of pollution reduction or other benefits, jobs, but also looking at potential challenges or problems that may be caused. But that next slide, please. Just to touch on, maybe I should call this differences in the transition process for fleets that operate only within California versus the vehicles that cross back and forth between California and Mexico. There's some obvious challenges there. First off, the ZEV mandates are very different between the two countries, especially between California and Mexico. And the electric grid, even on the California side, there are some substantial challenges. The grid is already on its way to becoming 100% renewable as part of the RPS Renewable Portfolio Standard. And we are also in the process of electrifying, for example, new construction, residential construction, and some other sectors. And obviously, the light duty sector, it's well on its way towards being a primarily electric population mix. And on top of that, the electric grid needs to accommodate the need for medium heavy duty charging, and in California, probably almost all of renewable hydrogen production. So we have either electrolysis-based hydrogen production or bioresources, biomass or biogas-based hydrogen production as the two options for green hydrogen. And I think it's primarily going to be electrolysis-based. So there's a lot of challenges with electric grid. I think San Diego Gas and Electric will talk maybe in a little bit more detail on that. And also, of course, these newer trucks are more expensive, and their incentives play a big role, and that may not be available everywhere, and there may be some limitations in terms of who is able to access those resources. The other challenge is related to the logistics, the range, how much load these trucks can carry, and how long it takes to charge them or fuel them. And which means we may not be able to simply switch out a diesel truck with a battery electric truck. There needs to be a complete reconfiguring of the logistics arrangement that's currently in place so that these trucks can fulfill their roles. And infrastructure and hydrogen supply challenges, those are also some obvious issues. Next slide, please. So the goal of this project is to look at all these different aspects of what needs to happen for the border fleet to transition, and by when, and then make recommendations, anticipate some of the needs. I won't go through all the different bullets here, and also I'm happy to make the presentation available either through the working group folks or if you email me. So we're going to be we are looking at the technology requirements, the infrastructure requirements, costs, environmental impacts, and what kind of incentives are available. Look at all of those, and some of those details are not captured in the published reports or papers. So we're also doing a lot of stakeholder engagement, talking to, for example, folks on the Mexico side, including ANPAC. We talk to the utilities, we talk to community members, and kind of making sure that we incorporate their perspectives. We are, as part of that process, going to be doing a survey, which is going to be an online survey that anyone is welcome to take. And we're going to be making it bilingual, both in English and Spanish. And if you are interested in that, I would love to have you participate in the survey. It'll be probably won't take more than 20 minutes to half an hour, and the results would be incorporated in our analysis and recommendations. And of course, the ultimate goal would be to make policy recommendations where it's appropriate. Next slide, please. This is a busy slide. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but I'll try to kind of give you a rough idea of what we're doing. So the boxes in orange here and here are all input data, and then we have the modeling and analysis in blue, and the results in green. So we rely on a number of sources, everything from the scoping plan to whatever truck data is available, whether it's the port of entry or at other locations. And we use this information to come up with a population mix, how many miles they're driving, which routes they're driving in, where are they currently domiciled, where are they refueling. I'll go into all of these in a little bit more detail, but this just shows the methodology. And then we do have information on current charging standards, station capacity that's possible, and all of those, and vehicle efficiencies. And then we look at the number of daily trips, the number of annual trips, what are the origin and destination points for those trips, and then there's some GIS data, and then utility electric transmission lines and capacities, where capacity is available, where capacity is limited. So we look at all of this to do our analysis to identify where specifically charging and fueling stations would be needed, and what capacity, number of chargers, what is the total capacity, and what kind of energy storage would be needed, how many trucks can they serve, and how that would affect the current setup that the industry has, and things like that. Now I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on each of these steps. Next slide, please. In terms of the vehicle projections, again, a little bit of a busy slide, but we do modeling to project how many vehicles are going to be transitioning into battery electric, how many are going to be transitioning into fuel cell electric, and how many are still going to be diesel, and any potential natural gas or hybrid vehicles. And this projection is kind of a bundled up projection that's shown on the graph here, but we do have this for, I think, close to 20 different categories. Within each class, we have subclasses and categories for vehicles. And we also are able to look at the total number of vehicle miles and the load they're carrying and all of those. Some of that information is highlighted in blue here. And this changes. So we use current state-of-the-art data available to update our vehicle projections. But one of the challenges here is this shows the total vehicle population, how that's going to transition. But what we really need to focus on right now is the priority fleets. And that's a little bit of a challenge to kind of pin down where exactly the first in group fleets are going to be located, where they're going to be transitioning. And that's something we're trying to work through. Next slide, please. And then we have transportation models. We do get access to them by working with agencies, local agencies like SCAG and SANDAG. And they do provide quite a bit of data on the traffic flow and where those flows are. And you can see kind of the red lines are where the high density flows are and the total number of trips. And they split these by traffic zones called TAZs. And this is very useful information, but there's also some limitations when it comes to the border region. Next slide, please. So this slide shows kind of a screenshot of the SANDAG model, which deals with the traffic flow in San Diego County between California and Mexico. And unlike the California side, it doesn't have very detailed origin or destination points for Mexico. It's not shown here, but if you look at the origin destination points, it's very detailed within California, and each box here kind of represents a TAZ. But for Mexico, it's assumed that there's a random or one origin point. And it's kind of it's not a literal physical point. It's kind of an assumption that the trucks originate from here and they enter through the Otay Mesa point of entry. So this makes it a little bit more difficult to identify or figure out exactly where those trucks are going to be and exactly where those infrastructure needs would be on the Mexico side. And that's something I think we're relying quite a bit on our partners on the Mexico side to work through. Next slide, please. And the other way we try to make sure that the analysis is not just based on assumptions and models is to try to look at the actual traffic data. There are some sources, not all the traffic is monitored and there's no single database, but there are some sources. This kind of screenshot shows one of those sources, which is Caltrans monitors some of the trucks entering at these ports of entry, and then there's traffic volume information. This is very useful information for us to kind of recalibrate our models and make sure that they're based on real world data and not just assumptions. Next slide, please. Another source of real world data, UC Irvine, Professor Steve Ritchie's group has been installing cameras at ports of entry and other locations to monitor truck traffic, and they've graciously shared the data with us. This is a relatively new, recent project, so there's not a lot of data available, but from our perspective, any GPS or camera or any type of real world data is extremely valuable because that helps us to, like I said, recalibrate and make sure that the models are grounded in reality. And there are a couple of other sources, and we're also talking to fleet owners, operators, and the chambers of commerce to get access to additional data. Next slide, please. On the grid side, San Diego Gas and Electric, of course, has a integration capacity analysis tool that kind of helps us to figure out where there is currently capacity to add a charging station and where there could be potential capacity to, for example, do electrolysis or maybe co-locate an electrolysis facility with a solar or wind facility, things like that. So this is an interesting or very useful tool for us to better understand the potential opportunities and potential limitations in terms of grid interconnection. Next slide, please. Again, it's a little bit more difficult on the Mexico side. There's no such tool available, at least as far as I can tell. But the government of Baja California is working on kind of developing more updated data. They've shared some of that information with us. But this particular screenshot shows a tool that's developed by a private company, a relatively new company called Tyco Solutions. And they've developed their own tools showing some of the substations and transmission lines and interconnection capacity. It's not as accurate or up to date as we would like it to be, but it's still, for us, very valuable. So this kind of helps us better understand where there's opportunities to do charging stations if they need to be built or deployed on the Mexico side. Next slide, please. This shows as an example how we approach this, but of course, the process is a little bit different for the broader region, but I thought this kind of helps put things in perspective. This is, of course, near where I am in Ontario, Rancho Cucamonga region, and this is one of the heavy traffic areas for heavy duty trucks. And once we understand the number of trucks driving through the different freeways and the roadways and side streets, and then we understand their origin and destination points, and also what vehicle classes they belong to and what kind of loads they're carrying. We also look at the freeway on-off ramp, which may not be as critical for the border. You can see the current truck terminals, the blue kind of squiggles are the freeway on-off ramps with, I think, the top 10% traffic density. And we also look at current truck stops and current fueling stations, and both to understand where those trucks currently refuel or currently they park them, but also to potentially explore if they can be repurposed, maybe not immediately, but in the longer term. The other pieces of information we look at, and not everything is listed here, is land use designation. So just by engaging with stakeholders, we figured out that the land use designation or the current zoning may actually make the process a little bit easier if we find a plot with the right zoning designation and we don't have to go into a residential. And the other aspect is, of course, looking at the residential communities and how best to mitigate the impact on those communities, especially those communities that have traditionally borne the brunt of this heavy-duty truck traffic. This includes not just pollution, but noise, congestion, and all of those other things. So we use a number of tools for that to identify those disadvantaged communities and the heavy traffic routes, and then we approach it through what we like to think of as eco routing or eco driving, things like that. So, for the border, there are some unique opportunities. For example, there's quite a bit of wait times at the border, and the ports of entry have specific locations, and there's specific tasks within nearby that provide that opportunity. So the process is a little bit different, but the idea is the same, to make recommendations on where the infrastructure needs to be deployed, and that what's the time frame for that, 5 years from now, 10, 20, and 30 years from now. Next slide, please. I think this is probably okay. So this slide, I think, kind of summarizes everything that I've talked so far. So in terms of this particular project, that's what we're doing. We're looking at the driving routes and what classes of vehicles and when are they going to transition, what year, what percentage of those vehicles are going to be battery electric, and what would be their range, and what would be their load carrying capacity, all of those, and the energy needs, and ultimately, the community benefits from all of this. That's the longer term goal behind all of these mandates. It's to reduce the impact on both locally but also globally. Next slide, please. Just a few thoughts before I wrap up my presentation. What we've realized is that unlike some of the other projects or activities that we've been engaged in, this particular, a portion or segment, the collaboration and engagement is very critical, because for a number of reasons. I think I touched on some of them earlier, but there are large repositories of data or databases are not available. So we have to use a combination of models and analysis, but also work with some of the entities I mentioned earlier, and fleet owners and operators to collect data sets that are more grounded in reality, that actually show us the real traffic data, so that we can better understand what the needs are from an infrastructure perspective, but also how best to maximize the benefits this process will ultimately result in and minimize some of the ongoing impacts. And to that end, we are talking to, including the panelists on this call, ANPACT and San Diego Gas and Electric, but to other entities. And we're interested in both quantitative and qualitative information. So there's quantitative information in terms of a fleet owner may be able to give us the number of trucks they're going to be purchasing in the next 5 years, battery electric trucks. But qualitative information, some of you may have heard in the previous working group panels. For example, there's a specific set of trucks that are typically used for the cross-border transportation. So they don't always drive deeper into California or go to other locations. They just go back and forth, probably about within a 30-mile distance of either side of the border. So that type of information, like I said earlier, is not really available in a lot of the published material. So we are always very interested in talking to stakeholders, whether you are with industry or with the community or with other agencies, to better understand your perspectives and find ways to incorporate that into our analysis. And like I said, there's going to be a survey coming up maybe in a month or so, and we'll be very glad to share links and have you participate in the survey. And I should mention that Alianza Mexico has been very instrumental in helping us to interact with stakeholders on the Mexico side. And of course, all the different entities working on this, we need to share information so that the process is improved for all the partners. With that, I'm going to stop. I'm happy to answer questions either now or later. And like I said, if you're interested in getting a copy of the presentation, or if you have questions, I'm happy to make myself available.
Arun, thank you. That was really, really informative. We're definitely going to be taking a look at your presentation. I mean, even in more detail, that was a lot of great data there. Do want to open it up to panelists for questions or comments. So if you would please raise your hand and we will we'll call on you. Wente, we don't need to unmute their microphones though, right? They can unmute themselves and make a comment.
The panelists can unmute themselves.
Yes, the panelists. Yeah, thank you. All right. So questions, comments, please.
If I may, I just want to thank again Arun for this presentation, and I want to say again, please, everyone interested in participating in this, take a look and send us an email if you want to get more info, because at the end, these scenarios and this modeling is only going to work with the best possible data. So please go ahead and share your info with us, even questions or comments, and yeah, we'll be sure that you can participate in this. And I don't know if someone else from the panelist side have a question or want to add something else to this matter.
Yeah, from my side, this is Rogelio Arzate from ANPACT. I think it's very important, and thank you Aaron, for the presentation. Definitely your last slide is very important in terms of collaboration and engagement. And for that reason, what I can tell you that is that in Impact, our associates are ready to offer these new technologies. Actually, in Mexico, the production of these electric vehicles is already happening with several brands. And of course, unfortunately for the future, it's difficult to share the information and what is happening or what is going to happen for many reasons. One of them is the fact that, for the offering, of course, as I was saying, the technology is there, but there are some important key topics that needs to be boosted in Mexico specifically, and also in the border, which are incentives and of course infrastructure, charging infrastructure, for example, for electric buses and so on. But that is not limiting us on the fact that we can work together in this collaboration and information and data. We can talk later about this. But again, the technology is available from the OEMs here in Mexico. Even one of our associates, which is Cummins, is working hardly in new technologies as well. So very important of what is coming, and of course the engagement count with Impact on this, and of course we can continue doing this interaction.
Thank you, Rogelio. I definitely agree. We'll be in touch.
And really looking forward to your presentation coming up too, Rogelio, about all the different things that are going on. That's sounds like it's growing even more than it was just even recently. So that's exciting. Any more?
Bruce,
Yeah, yes.
if there are no questions from the panelists, I see somebody raise their hand in the attendees. Are we doing questions now, or are we waiting for comments from or questions from attendees later?
You know, if and I see we have a couple. We are a little tight on time, but let's see. We can go ahead and open up for a couple of quick questions. I see Gladys has her hand up. Why don't we, Wendy, if we can let Gladys ask a question, as long as it's about this presentation, please go ahead. But we do need to move on after that. Yeah, actually, thank you, Gio. Actually, thank you very, very much. I thought that was the case. Totally forgot. Please use and if you're in the audience, please don't hesitate to use the chat box. We can see that. But why don't we open up that one to that one question? Oops, I don't see it anymore though. Maybe they've lowered their hand. No, yeah, there it is. Am I not seeing it? Oh, there it is. No, it's still up there. Wente, can we?
Hello.
Yes.
If
Gladys.
we're already working in Mexico, I'm working Baja, San Luis Potosí, and other regions. How do we get a copy of the presentation, and who should be my contact person if I want to go into the other areas? If you can, because the chat is disabled, so we don't have a way to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ask for the presentation.
Okay, I thought
we need a copy of the presentation because I'm already working in Mexico and I'm on the list for emergency services. AMLO put me on the list.
So first of all, we will be happy to send it out to the panelists. Wente, I will ask you, do we have people's email addresses that are on the call? Can we access that, or can we open? Oh, I see Israel has his hand up. Or can we open up the chat? I'm kind of hesitant to do that, but I do want to make sure that people get the presentation. We don't have a place to post it.
We have the emails of everybody.
Great. What we can do, we will send the presentations out to everybody, both panelists and attendees. All right. Thank you, Gladys. Let's move on. And Israel, being one of our panelists, you can go ahead. Yep, there you go. Just unmute yourself. What's your question? Then we'll move on.
Thank you, Bruce, and hi everyone. Good morning. Just to let you know that we have ended with the California State on Baja the study of 6 months of information to share with all the interested parties, even with CAR, about what we have on both sides. to compliance. We just have a meeting. We had a meeting actually the day before yesterday, Friday, with the new Secretary of State, and we're having another meeting with the Energy Department in Baja next month. So hopefully we can share also more information on top of the information, Bruce, that you already going to share with us, because the more we have the dates closer, the more it's going to be difficult for carriers at the border to comply. So we are really interested to do panels at the border, the Mexican and US side, and share all the info we have, and have this meeting with unpacking everyone related to get to all the carriers at the border. So that we'll be doing the next couple of weeks.
That sounds fantastic, and obviously we'd love to be a part of that. You know, that is great, and I know, you know, and I'd actually kind of like to ask you now. I'm not going to, because I want to move on, but I'm kind of curious, and Gio, this would be open to you and others as well. With the new administration in Mexico City, I'm wondering, you know, has that had a positive impact? I know the new president was an environmental engineer, so it might be interesting to hear that at some point. But I do want to move on right now. Let's go on to the presentation from San Diego Gas and Electric. And Israel, I think your mic's still hot, so just want to make sure that there's no yeah, there you go. Yeah, so let's go on to the presentation from SDG&E. I see it's up, and is that Tony? Then I'm assuming that's giving it.
Hey Bruce, yeah, no, it's my folks from our team are giving the presentation. I just want to introduce him real quick. We have Anderson Bowles he's our Clean Transportation Analytics Manager, and we also have Chris Roberts from our Customer Solutions team. They're going to share with you some of what's happened with the study we developed in the Otay Mesa area, and also highlight and just mention again some of the offerings we have through our clean transportation programs. So with that, I'll pass it on to Anderson so he can get started.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it. If you don't mind going to the next slide. Yes, so just a high level about myself really quick. I am the Clean Transportation Analytics Manager at San Diego Gas and Electric. That means I run a small team with analysts that are studying to understand what transportation electrification means for the grid, and trying to pinpoint a bit more accurately where the greatest areas of impact will be, and to proactively plan so that we are not a barrier to electrification for fleets. So with that, I'm going to speak a little bit about, at a high level, about a study we performed earlier this year to study specifically the Otay Mesa region and what it would look like as fleets begin to electrify there in accordance with policy. So if you don't mind, next slide. So we performed this study in partnership with Quanta Technologies, and really the goal was to understand this Otay Mesa region. Specifically, we focused on the 92154 zip code. We know that Advanced Clean Fleets rule is going to apply to logistics companies domiciled both locally within this zip code, as well as adjacently as they traverse the international border delivering goods. So really my focus was far more on the utility side, to understand the impact of the electrification of medium and heavy duty vehicles in that region. What can we expect on the distribution system, the transmission system, at our substations? And so a portion of that is understanding the electrification due to policy and various regulations that are putting pressure on fleets to electrify, as well as those fleets that may fall outside of the regulation who may also electrify over time as technology improves and total cost of ownership comes down. And also, really, my goal here was to develop a repeatable process, something that we could refresh annually as we gather better data sets, improve our methodology through conversations with our customers in these fleets that are electrifying, to try to find the most accurate and timely approach to understanding these load increases and planning the grid accordingly. Just for all of you, I believe many of you are aware, but why we focused on this area is really because of the large volume of goods moving in and out of this border region across the international ports, specifically, looking at 60 billion in annual cross-border trade activity, around 1 million annual freight truck crossings. And the other part of the story, which we didn't study here, but that is also has load impacts over time, is the passenger vehicles. So as our much larger population of passenger vehicles electrifies, we're paying attention to those electrification loads as well, because in aggregate, it will impact the same distribution, transmission, substation systems. And there's about 30 million annual personal vehicle crossings just in this region. Next slide, please. So my presentation is actually very similar to Arun's. I was so happy to hear him go first. We have so many parallels in what we're trying to study and understand. I'm going to give you a very high-level process overview of our focus area, and it really broke down into these 3 kind of columns or categories. That is really finding the operational facilities, where we believe these fleets are depoted, domiciled, and where they are most likely to charge. For our purposes, we believe, especially in this border region where, kind of to Arun's point, many of the trucks are just going back and forth, very short distances when you think of a long haul truck. We expected the bulk of charging to occur at depots as opposed to public stations. And so we looked across many different data sets. There is no one silver bullet data set to understanding this problem, but instead we had to compare a lot of different data sets. Kind of our primary data set being the Department of Transportation records, because they have fairly granular data on the fleets themselves, the makeups of those fleets, the vehicles, their classifications, their annual mileages, their operating locations, in addition to their physical or mailing address locations. We also looked at SIC code data to understand those business types, business categories. We looked at SANDAG data as well as zoning data to kind of make sure we were capturing it across all these different data sets, the majority of commercial and industrial operations. And finally, we look to DMV registration records to kind of fill in some of the gaps for non-fleet medium and heavy duty vehicles. Many fleets are found in Department of Transportation records, but smaller fleets like individual ownership often doesn't rise to the level of Department of Transportation records. Sometimes they are individual or a regular customer use, not a commercial industrial use, but we would expect those still to electrify long term. Next step is categorizing of all those operational facilities and their associated fleets. So that is to say, what policy or regulation is going to drive them to electrify, and over what time frame, and kind of what are the expectations of a fleet of a set size, 200 vehicles. How fast or how many of those vehicles would we expect to transition to electric over what span of time? We really approached the rate of electrification based on the policy guidance. So it's a bit of a conservative approach in that this is saying that all policy is met. And then I'll go to the next step, which is finally kind of estimating those loads based on the facilities, the size of them, and then how fast we expect them to electrify, and then what kind of their mileage or travel distances are looking like within the records, and then estimating the charging need. So we set it at a minimum charger needed to meet daily operations. And then, kind of figuring out based on the vehicle class, the efficiencies, and what demand or power needs we expect from each of those fleets in those very specific regions or depots or operating facilities. With that, we mapped out many different scenarios. Okay, so what if hydrogen plays a bigger role in the outer years, and we see less electrification and a bit more of a push to hydrogen. What would that look like as compared to a fully electric scenario? We also looked at different charging scenarios. How is the demand or the impact on the grid modified if you compress your charging into a tighter window? So you have a higher level charger and you charge very fast versus you install lower level chargers and you spread that charging out over a broader span of time. What are the impacts on the system? So with that, the next slide, please. I kind of alluded to many of these data types, but I just wanted to kind of call out the way we're kind of breaking this down. So really focusing on specific locations, a bottoms-up approach to estimating these loads, understanding different zoning that may affect, where these pockets of commercial industrial are. So where we expect those depots to really turn up for charging. Categorizing facilities on business type, on the classes of vehicles, so that we can apply the correct adoption expectations to those, as well as how they operate. What hours of the day do they most commonly operate, and when would they be expected to charge if they're maintaining their existing business operations? Understanding of EV rates. So that is to say, how much does it cost to charge depending on the time of day you're charging and how much volume you are using. So there may be efficiency levers there where to try to save on charging costs, a fleet operator may try to shift some of their charging to a different period of time. So trying to understand that and how it would impact 24-hour load curve on the grid. The chargers that are being selected, the different power levels that are currently available, considering the cost of chargers, the cost of installation, and the operational needs to meet, say, a short haul truck driving every day versus a long haul that needs to maximize that battery and maybe even pick up some public charging down the road. I already spoke to regulations, and the vehicle counts and classifications is really to understand into the weeds on these vehicles. How big are the batteries? What ranges are they capable of? And then are there certain efficiency dips with a fully loaded truck versus an empty truck? Things like that. And I already walked through scenarios, kind of the different levers we're considering to not just develop one scenario, but multiple scenarios that we can kind of apply based on what we're observing or the conversations we're having with customers about what's really happening on the ground. Next slide, please. So just high level, some of our takeaways from our initial study of the Otay Mesa area, there's over 1,000 operating sites identified. That is to say 3 or more vehicles operating out of a given site. Otay Mesa contains 23% of all the medium and heavy duty vehicles within our service territory. That is San Diego County and a small portion of Orange County. And of those vehicles, 51% of the class 7 and 8 vehicles in SDG&E's territory are operating out of this single zip code, domiciled there. With this, we expect hundreds of megawatts of incremental demand as these medium duty and heavy duty vehicles electrify through 2045. So we are using this study and our understanding of the expected rate of growth to proactively plan our infrastructure to ensure we are able to provide power when it is requested in support of that electrification. And some key takeaways from those charging window scenarios. We notice that varying the charging time can have a significant impact on the total load on the system. So not just your transportation load, but the transportation load on top of all the other existing loads on the system. And finally, compressing the charging load into, say, a super off-peak period, like from midnight to 6 a.m. or midnight to 9 a.m., causes a much larger peak to occur because these loads are large and they're all being smashed into a smaller period of time that could actually create a new peak on the system. So it's something to watch out for, is how we think about how we're incentivizing customers to choose when they charge, or what other systems are in play, be it battery storage or solar in combination, to help smooth out some of those peaks and put less of a impact on the grid. And I believe that was my last slide. Let's go to the next slide. Just see if I had anything else. Oh yes. So last but not least, my next steps are going beyond the Otay Mesa study to study this across our entire service territory. I'm very interested in talking to companies and individuals on the ground that have additional insight or new data sets. Similar to Arun, we're going out and we're just looking everywhere we can for this data. No, there's no silver bullet in terms of data sets. We kind of have to bring in dozens of different data sets to understand this problem from different perspectives. So I'm always open to collaboration. We will be refreshing this study annually. And for example, next year, my goal is to really bring in a greater amount of data from the other side of the border to better understand the trucks that are not domiciled within our territory, but that are also domiciled within Mexico, and to better understand how their cross-border traffic may impact electric load growth on the US side of the border. And finally, I'm open to sharing these findings and what we're finding along the way, and learning from each other and collaborating. So thank you so much for your time, and that's all I have. I'll go ahead and pass it to Chris.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Christopher Roberts. I'm a Senior Customer Solutions Advisor with San Diego Gas and Electric. A little bit about myself. I've been with the company for about a year now. Prior to this, I worked down in Otay Mesa in diesel sales, believe it or not, diesel sales and renewable energy projects. So a funny combination there. I've always been along the border. I grew up in Calexico, Mexicali as a fronterizo. And I have a lot of a passion about this region. I'm really excited to be able to help our customers in the border region to facilitate this transition to electric trucks from diesel. So before I get started, let me just talk at a very high level what the value proposition is of our Power Drive for Fleets program. We offer charger rebates, and this is actually something new that we didn't offer in Otay up until late May of this year. So you can get up to 50% cost reduction on your chargers. We offer customer side infrastructure, which is exclusive to our program. Typically, if you wanted to install DC fast chargers in your yard, we would cover the utility side costs, but you'd be responsible for everything happening in your yard. Under this program, we will help subsidize, up 100% or 80%, depending on what pathway you choose. And I'll go a little bit into that in a second. And we offer our commercial EVHP rate, not exclusive to this program, but it's our commercial rate that offers incredible savings versus diesel, which I'll also talk more in depth about. And not exclusive to this program, it's something you should know about, is our LCFS credits. So yes, electric trucks are better for the environment. They're cleaner, especially when talking about localized emissions, and you're thinking about all these trucks that are idling at the border and emitting carcinogenic diesel particulate matter. So that all goes away with electric trucks. And one way you can add a value to that benefit is through LCFS credits. Next slide, please. So these are some of the requirements for our program. Why do we have requirements? Because these are a ratepayer program funds that we need to make sure are properly utilized. We don't want someone with one electric vehicle installing 100 chargers that are never going to be utilized, and not taking advantage in an efficient way of our program. So some of the requirements are: you need to demonstrate a commitment to procuring 2 electric vehicles. This doesn't mean you'll be accepted into our program, but it'll start having those initial conversations. We like to see a good use of chargers to vehicles, again, to make sure that we're making good use of ratepayer program funds. You need to demonstrate a long-term electrification growth plan and schedule of load increase. If you're on this call, you're likely being impacted by the ACF rule, so that's not a heavy lift. We'll look at your fleet size, your requirements under the ACF rule, and then work out your plan based off of that. You need to provide data related to charger usage for a minimum of 5 years. This is not something that you need to continuously do. This is a one-time interface we do with your chargers, and that charger will automatically provide data to us for the 5 years. And you need to own or lease the property where the chargers are installed and operate and maintain vehicles and chargers for a minimum of 10 years. This is a 10-year program agreement. If you're leasing the property, that's not an issue. We just need to get your landlord involved and make sure that they're okay with the install. Next slide, please. Now, these are some of the vehicles that qualify for our program. So say you wanted to get the 5 chargers and 5 vehicles. These are the vehicles that we would consider. Careful though, just because these vehicles are considered for our program, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're considered for the ACF rule. So make sure that the vehicles you're acquiring as part of your fleet actually do fall within the compliance parameters of the ACF rule. For our program at the smaller end, you have class 2 or higher forklifts with a 6,000-pound gross vehicle weight or higher. And then at the larger end, of course, you have your big class 8 semis. Next page, please. Okay, now this is highly important. Option 1 and option 2. These are the 2 pathways that our program offers, and it's one of the initial decisions you're going to make when you apply for our program. Under option 1, we will rebate 100% of the customer side infrastructure, so all the stuff that goes on in your yard, not including the chargers. Under option 2, we will rebate 80% after the project is finished, not including the chargers. So you're probably thinking, why would I go? Yes, Israel, go ahead.
Hey, Chris, I have a question on this presentation you're doing, and I think Tony also explained about it. Do you have any plan, you and Tony, to set this kind of facilities in the Mexican side with payment in the U.S. or some kind of any program in the U.S., but the physical installation on the Mexican side?
So not now, Israel. That would obviously be CFE, the government-owned utility in Mexico. The installations under this program would have to be in our service territory. That's not to say that, trucks that need to operate on the Mexican side can't come over and charge in our service territory, which in large part I expect to happen moving forward for some reasons that I'll be happy to talk about later, but it would not happen yet.
Okay, thank you.
Jump in real quick, Chris. Just if we can hold the questions, we have one more presentation. We're starting to run close on time, so if we can hold those until the end for the other panelists, we'll get to whatever we can. I promise.
Okay, so going back to this slide, option 1, option 2. Why would you choose option 2 if it's less of a rebate versus option 1? Because under option 1, that equipment that we put into your yard technically belongs to San Diego Gas and Electric, which means we will maintain it, we will take care of it, but it will be ours, which means there will be an easement on your property. You can then not add any sort of solar generation, battery, external generators. What you ask is what you get, and it ends there. Under option 2, it all belongs to you. You can do whatever you want with the system, but you only get up to that 80% rebate. Next slide, please. So this is the timeline for our project. If you submit an interest form, which could essentially just be calling me on the phone right now, I'll put my information down in the chat here, then that would begin this process. We'd get through your interest form, work on an application submittal, and then we have an 11 to 16 month timeline. If I'm being candid and honest, it typically takes about 24 months to get one of these projects done, just because each project is very unique and presents its own obstacles. But I'm happy to work through this process with you and try to make it as efficient as possible. Next slide, please. This is our Rule 45. It's our standard EV infrastructure rule. If for whatever reason you are not allowed to participate in our Power Your Drive for Fleets program, you can opt for Rule 45, which should exist in perpetuity as long as SDG&E is around. And what Rule 45 offers is a no cost consideration for utility side infrastructure, which means we will get you power to your property wherever you're at, and then you're responsible for everything on your property. So you don't get access to that subsidy, but in some cases this might be the way to go depending on the use case or the challenges that your yard faces. Next slide, please. So that's all I have as far as our program is concerned. One thing I did want to add very quickly due to comments related to our ICA map, make sure that you talk to us before making a decision based on what you see on the ICA map, because even though the ICA map, the interconnection map that we publicly offer, shows you what's currently being utilized on a circuit, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's showing what's coming down the pipeline as far as projects are concerned. So you could see maybe 5 megawatts available, but Joe Schmo has 5 megawatts coming down the pipeline that's not being reflected there, and you're actually not going to get service. So reach out to us, talk to us. We'll make sure we get you the right solution based on your needs. Thank you so much for your time today.
Chris, thank you so much, and that was and Anderson as well. I think we're hearing today there's a lot of new things coming into play. And first of all, I am going to open it up just quickly. Any questions from the panelists? I do want to move on as quickly as possible to Rogelio. But please, any questions from panelists or comments on San Diego Gas and Electric?
I just wanted to thank as well to SDG and the team. I'm so eager to continue collaboration. I mean, this is Arun and Anders presented something that it's evident that it's not just one people trying to do the same. We're seeking the same data, the same info, the same opportunities. So I just want to thank you again, SDG team. Thank you, Tony, and let's continue to work together.
Thank you, Jill. Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I am glad we went in this order, because I think Rogelio is going to bring us some even more really interesting new things that are always going on in this field. So having said that, Rogelio, I will ask you to begin your presentation, please.
Can you see it now?
We can. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Let me go into a presentation mode, and thank you again to Alianza, to Jill, and also to the University of California and the rest of the colleagues that are here on the panel. As you know, AMPACT is the National Association for Buses, Trucks, and Tractor Trucks manufacturers here in Mexico. And in general, I would like to start my presentation to show you who we are in general in Mexico. We have in total 15 associates. From those, 14 of those are OEMs and one engine manufacturer, which is Cummins, as you are familiar with. And basically, we are present in the whole Mexico in 10 very important states, which include Baja California, going into the north below, also in Coahuila, Nuevo León. Also, we touch an important state here in Mexico, which is Jalisco, and important states on Mexico, including San Luis Potosí, Guanajuato, the state of Mexico, and also Hidalgo, as you see the presence. And we have a variety of important and very important brands in Mexico that produces or imports vehicles here. Some numbers on the right side that you can see. Well, we are #1 exporter of trucks worldwide, meaning Mexico is the #1 of what we do in terms of the production and export, mainly to the US. 80% of the volume that we export goes to the US. Also, another important number is we are #4 in exporting the rest of the combination that we do have for heavy-duty vehicles, which include the tractors, the trucks, and the buses. And in terms of production, again, we are number 5 in terms of production of trucks, and #6 specifically for buses. And what we create and our associates create in Mexico, but not only in Mexico, also for North America, of course, because as I was mentioning, the production is going not only for the local market, but also to export to an important market, which is the US. But in general, in Mexico, we create 80,000 jobs that are indirect, including the direct jobs, but specifically for the production of the vehicles, 28,000 direct jobs. So going forward into what represents our products that our associates represent. We basically touch all the economic activities, as you can tell here on the slide. 96% of the vehicles that our associates produce go to tourism, state by state, also 83% on national land cargo. workers as well, and students, we have a very important number with 41 and 27% respectively. But please focus on your attention on the last two, which is on the delivery and distribution, 100%. In foreign trade, the value is 71%. In general terms, the customers of our associates are divided per the table that you see below. Between the truck persons that has a fleet of 1 to 5, that are basically 80% of the companies and represent almost 23% of the vehicles. But also the small businesses are having a very important number of vehicles with 29% on the small businesses. And of course, the biggest ones are having major number of vehicles with 30%. And 205,000 cargo transport companies are registered into the transport minister here in Mexico. So moving on the items on the fleet, and some of the panelists have already mentioned this, but in Mexico we have a great challenge. In general terms, is how to boost the renewal of the fleet that we do have in Mexico. We have a very huge potential with around 41%, but as you can see in the chart, we have vehicles here in Mexico that also, the average of the fleet is around 19 years old. But we see that we do have vehicles even 50 years or more than 50 years old here in Mexico. And of course, those can go into a museum specifically, but if we divide the trucks, tractors, and also what we call the buses, you see the percentage is 39% on the trucks and tractors and 53 on the passenger buses, in total 41. So the total vehicle to renew is around 321,000, almost 322,000. But we do believe that programs for scrapping in Mexico are very important. It's one of the challenges that we are pushing hard here in Mexico, and of course that help into the change of the fleet here in Mexico. Some figures, additional figures. Our best January to May sales since 15 years ago. These are the numbers. If you see them, just the figures from January to July this year. On exports and production, we have seen a small reduction, but as you can see in 2023, in those two variables, we have placed record numbers, 177,000 on exports and production, 123, almost 223,000 units. Those are records, and we are seeing the same in Mexico. Why we are seeing a decrease a little bit is just because of the process that we have been facing in North America for elections in Mexico and also in the US, and most in the following years will be in Canada, and that has bring a little bit of volatility, if you will, in terms of the requirements of our customers. But in addition, the production, we have an incident on a mirror plant here in Escobedo, Nuevo León, which was limiting the production of the vehicles. But we truly believe that in the following years or the following months, this is going to be very good, and we are going to place new records. On the retail side, though, in Mexico, we have very positive news. So far, we have been seeing an important growth from the first 7 months of the year, with almost 32,000 units, with an increase of 9.2 versus the same period of 2023. And also we had some records, 52,000 units already, and we see a similar number or a little bit higher for the rest of the year. And one of the items that we also would like to tackle here in Mexico is the used vehicles that are imported here in Mexico. So far, from January to July 2024, we have seen an important increase of 120% on those vehicles being imported into Mexico. Of course, those vehicles already finalized their productive life in the US, and we have seen 18,000 units that were already imported, and is affecting, of course, the sales of new vehicles, and of course, affecting also the importance of having new technologies in Mexico, and also having new safety standards in Mexico. So those are the ones that we would like to tackle and work together. Now, going into the specific topic, you know, in Impact and also our associates are going into a transition into the whole process of becoming green. Of course, we are going to be there. It's just a matter of time. And of course, we are moving into the vehicles, the internal combustion engine vehicles with diesel. And as you know, in 2025, Mexico is moving into a new standard. We are going into EPA 10 or Euro 6, which is the similar standard for emissions, and we are ready for that. But also in terms of combustion engine, we have natural gas with having very good standards with the Euro 5 or Euro 5 and EPA 7 or higher technologies. But you know, moving into greener technologies, of course, we are offering, and in Impact, our associates can offer as well, hybrids, which is a combination of the electric vehicles and diesel engine. But one of the important items, and we are going totally green in some of the offering that we do have here in Mexico, and some of our associates are already providing these technologies. Of course, electric vehicles in terms of charging and also the last mile delivery, those are available already, but also hydrogen vehicles that is are in test in some pilots here in Mexico. And you know, in between those technologies, we also have the ones that you see below, the biofuels, of course, and the synthetic fuels. And all these technologies are coexisting right now in Mexico based on our reality and the availability of infrastructure, of course, which is one of the major challenges that we do have. I'm going to talk more about it, but this is how we are in the whole ecosystem for transportation and the available technologies that are coexisting here in Mexico. In terms of new technologies, this is some of the examples of what is being offered into the Mexican market. As you can see, and sorry that some of the names are in Spanish, but if you can see most of the pictures that I do have here for you to see are electric or are related to new technologies, combustion engine, but also full electric, which is a combination of buses, tractors, and trucks in general in Mexico. And as you can tell, many of the brands that we do have here in Mexico are offering these important vehicles, like you know, you see here, and hopefully you can see my pointer, but it's you know, Mack Electric, Volkswagen, also Electric, Dina, which is the local brand here in Mexico. So it's using you know, electric buses and providing for RTPs here in Mexico. And Kenworth as well, and Navistar or International are offering also some vehicles. So we have plenty of good green technologies being offered. Now, what are the challenges that we do see in terms of this decarbonization process? You know, the whole and the number of technologies that our associates are offering, of course, compound the whole ecosystem of decarbonization. And we have divided these challenges into 4 key items. One, of course, and we already talked about it, is the size or the age of the fleet, which, as I was mentioning before, is 19 years old. And we have 3 generations behind. So we need to work specifically for scrapping programs on heavy duty vehicles. Now, on your right side, of course, the green initiatives and financing are very important. So this will be supporting, of course, the renewal of the fleet and the infrastructure, of course. But financing is very important here in Mexico. Here, Nacional Financiera will play a very important role. And we have, as mentioned, we have been working into a program for this scrapping process that will involve Nacional Financiera, which is the major association or major entity, sorry, for doing these financing purposes, but also the financing companies inside, or the financing arms inside of the companies will be involved. And of course, you know, having good rates for financing and so on will help us to do that on the green initiatives that we would like to implement. And the other 2, of course, on the left below side is the infrastructure. And of course, as of today, unfortunately, in Mexico, we have 0 hydrogen public station. We have also 0 electric public stations for heavy duties. Of course, the size, in this case, for the heavy duty vehicles matters. And most of the stations are already available, but are the corresponding private companies that are buying this type of technologies and vehicles. So this is very important to also boost in terms of the facilitating the whole process of installing infrastructure in each one of those companies, private companies that have important fleets in Mexico, but also for the truck persona, the persona camion that we do have here in Mexico. Talking about all technologies, only 63 public natural gas stations, and diesel, we have more than 10,000. So the capacity and distribution is very important, and how to do the whole process of transmitting the electricity that are also coming or is coming from renewable energies, and all the power supply is very important. And the last one, but not least, of course, is the regulatory framework. We are lacking of some regulations for vehicles, how the whole process of the charging infrastructure and also the charging standards are needed. And of course, the supervision. Also thinking about the production of new vehicles and new technologies. One of the important items in the whole supply chain not only is the regulations for commercializing these vehicles, but also the regulations at the beginning and at the end of the supply chain. One of them, of course, is the capability that Mexico will have for critical minerals. Of course, as we know, lithium and copper are available in Mexico with big deposits of those two critical minerals. So having a correct regulation for that is very important, but also at the end of the supply chain, the items and reviews of circular economy regulation is very important also for treating batteries and how to manage those here in Mexico. So these are the challenges that we do see for decarbonization. But in terms of how to tackle these challenges, these are the pillars that we have defined in order to influenciate in the public policy here in Mexico and also in North America. Of course, we are pursuing and looking for an ongoing dialogue and coordination with the authorities, but not only with the authorities. Now, what we were talking, of course, the key players into the whole process is also the academy, of course, the University of California, CARF, and also Alianza are very important into this whole dialogue, and these type of forums are very important for this matter. But also, as I was saying, the coexistence of these different technologies and the whole process of the transition is important here in Mexico. Again, as we were mentioning, the supply of energy, renewable energy is important. Thinking about electricity, of course, and hydrogen, which is we do believe that is the ultimate goal for the heavy duty industry and how that is going to work in general terms. If we separate the, thinking about the type of vehicles and the different type of vehicles that our associates offer, the last mile and the public transportation are more suitable for electric vehicles, but also hydrogen in terms of the future are the best suitable for long distances and cargo transportation. So we do believe that those coexistence technologies will be important. And of course, in that sense, developing the energy sources, rechargeable infrastructure are very important, supported by policies and regulation framework. And of course, we talk about the scrappage programs and the sustainable finance and the connectivity. For example, one of the important items in connectivity, of course, is in terms of infrastructure, but also homologations of 5G implementation, for example, here in Mexico, or infrastructure in general in the crossing border points. And last but not least in this slide is the human capital development. Of course, as we are producers and we represent the producers here in Mexico, the human capital focusing on clean energies and green energies are very important and essential for these decarbonization technologies and strategies. I'm not going to go through all the slides because it's a little bit busy and eye-catching, but this is what is happening on developing an ongoing infrastructure and also regulations. But of course, working with some of the authorities, Semarnat, of course, in terms of emission limits and so on, that is supported by the Regulation 044 is very important. I was just mentioning at the beginning the availability of this new internal combustion engine technology for heavy-duty vehicles, EPA 10 Euro 6, which is in process, and of course in 2025 or associates are ready to offer this new technology in favor of the environment. Also, the CRE, the Regulatory Electricity Commission, is also doing this integration of vehicles and plug-in hybrid vehicle charging infrastructure is very important, of course, in the flexibility of the standards. And of course, those two that I just mentioned were published, and affects and are making real to have a specific regulation or norm, how we call the regulations here in Mexico, for charging infrastructure and charging standards. The others that are, ongoing, functioning, or coming are related to safety devices, of course, federal hybrid electric vehicles, templates or plates, I'm sorry, and the electric charging connectors, which are very, very important, as well as the scrapping programs. And those are ongoing, and we continue working. In general, of course, the collaboration that we could have between the key stakeholders that I was mentioning here in Mexico, but also in North America, will be very important to continue and continue working with these regulations in Mexico. As my final slide, these are the conclusions. Of course, in Impact, our associates are really committed with a clean environment. This is going to take time, of course. The technologies will coexist, but of course, everybody understands the importance of moving into a new technology and clean technologies, which include, of course, I was mentioning the whole EVs, hybrids, hydrogen, of course. The timing is a little bit different, of course, here in Mexico, based on the economic situation, but definitely we're going to go there. And again, as I was mentioning also during my presentation, subject to the implementation and the requirement, different options to decarbonize are available. There are several options that include internal combustion, but also with new technologies, and of course more efficient technologies, but also new technologies that will mitigate and migrate to the zero carbon technology. This transition, this coexistence is very important. We talk also about the charging infrastructure challenges, and of course this is key in order to implement and boost the adoption of these new technologies. And as I was mentioning, incentives for boosting self-charging infrastructure in our customer yards or facilities are very important and are required. And this roadmap is vital for the definition of objectives, milestones, and responsible parties. Again, in Impact, we are very open to talk and discuss and work with different authorities, key stakeholders at several levels, of course, at federal, local level, state level, or municipality levels to make this happen. And of course, the technologies are available, or companies and the companies that we represent are already producing this type of technologies, and we will be ready when the infrastructure is ready and when in general the technologies can be boosted here in Mexico. And this was my last slide. If you have any comment or question, open to talk.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rogelio. I just wanted to say that we sincerely appreciate the partnership we've had with Impact since the launch of the Zero Emission Vehicles Task Force. Then you have been actively participating in the technical advisory committee of the project that has been by Arun that he presented earlier. And now joining the Binational Working Group, participating in this meeting, we sincerely thankful for that. And also, I just want to add that I do completely agree that not only the zero emission new technologies can offer a significant reduction of emissions, maybe it's something about efficiency in the actual technologies. But of course, we need to conduct some studies about that, having the the baselines of emissions and then comparing the mitigation scenarios with different technologies. This is something that we're looking for, like getting to know what's needed in terms of new projects, of new research. But thank you very much. Sorry, Bruce, I didn't see you there, and
No,
I started.
from my side, I just want to mention, has been amazing doing this collaboration with you. Count with us on this whole process. We can continue working with you, the academy, of course, and the key stakeholders for having this transition as soon as possible. Of course, we would like to be more or quicker into the whole process. But of course, to do so, we need the proper public policies in place. And doing the collaboration not only inside of Mexico, inside of the states inside of Mexico, but also in North America. Definitely, this collaboration is needed, and really appreciate Jael, all the good collaboration that we have had with Alianza, but also with CARB, and the rest of the University of California. Thank you so much, and count with us. Definitely, we will continue collaborating with you.
And that's exactly what these meetings are about. Thank you so much, Rogelio. That was, I think, excuse me, we've had 3 really good presentations today. Lots of great information, and I learn a lot. I've been thrown into this world. I live this world, but I learn a lot every time we have these kind of meetings. I had no idea of just the activity that was going on in Mexico. So I think that's really fantastic. As you said, there has to be the collaboration. Obviously at the border, but all throughout California, we're collaborating with everyone that we can to make these things happen, and so critical at the border. So I want to thank you. I want to thank everybody that hung on. I know we went a little bit long. I wanted to have a conversation about a couple of group things, but I think we'll have to do that in email. But these were just such important conversations, and as I said earlier, it's all about bringing possible solutions, and not just possible, but the ongoing solutions and the coming solutions to the audience. So if there are any last questions from the panel, please feel free to jump in. Alex. Oops, you're on mute, Alex.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentations. I coincidentally liked everyone very much. I would collaborate with anybody that is willing to work with us in ANTP. But the only thing I would like to mention to Rogelio is that we need to also include the possibility of not only what they are doing as MPAC, but also as manufacturing or using the best technologies being developed for the reality of many of the last mile transportation, over the road transportation. Everything is really similar. It doesn't mean that we have to design completely different vehicles, but the fact is that some of the vehicles that we want to use electrified in Mexico, in the border, and in other parts of the country are not exactly the ones being developed right now by their associates in the world. So we need to open up the collaboration and the making sure that we also include whatever changes in design we need, not only for the cross-border operation, but also for the internal operation in Mexico, so that we can have this clear pathway to electrifying and a better decarbonized transportation in the future. That's the only thing I would add to the very good presentation, and thank you for having us again and hosting this very important collaboration. Thank you to everybody.
Absolutely. And Alex, I'm really glad that you are able to join our panel. You were so beneficial last time, and I know will be beneficial ongoing. But for those of you that weren't in our last panel, Alex brought a really cool idea. I felt it was a really cool idea about the possibility of using modified yard trucks to do the cross-border work. They're perfect for that. Rogelio, I see your hand up. Please.
Yes. Thank you so much, and so nice to see you, Alex. Thank you for your comment. Definitely, agreeing with what you are mentioning. Sometimes even subject to the state or the national roads that we do have might be a tailor-made situation, and you know, we need to work together on this 100%. Count with us, Alex, and of course, ANTP has been always an amazing partner, and we can definitely collaborate. And by the way, happy birthday! I know that your birthday was just recently, so happy birthday for
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
You know, I'm going to say one last thing before we close it out, because it's exactly what I'm hearing from Alex, you, from Rogelio, from everybody. You know, I have been lucky. If you know what the ACT Expo is, I've been lucky for the last 3 years to go to that. It's a huge advanced technology exposition, and one of the things, and this impresses me because competing manufacturers, competing businesses all say this in kind of this new world of zero emission technology. It's we all have to collaborate on this, and they realize that they do, and I think that's really fantastic, really heartening, and that's exactly what what we're trying to do here and what we're hearing here. Rogelio, I don't know if maybe did you stop, put your hand out? Do you have another comment?
No, I just have one commercial to do, and that is very important. As you know, we are gonna have Expo Transporte next year on November, and that's where many of our associates present new technologies in Guadalajara. So you are cordially invited. It's very important for you to see what our associates offer, and of course, the associates from Alex and many other associations here in Mexico, they do buy new technologies. Of course, you are welcome. It's going to be on the 12th to the 14th of November here in Guadalajara, Jalisco. So we are in 2025, of course, and we are waiting. We will be waiting for you to see the whole offering of our associates. Sorry for
That was
the
a very worthwhile
but it's
commercial.
important in terms of technology.
Yes, absolutely. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your Monday, and we'll get ready for the next meeting. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Gracias, Rogelio.
Have a
Bye.
great day. Bye,
Gracias a ti,
Alex.
Alex.
Bye.
Gracias a todos.
Un gusto. Que estén bien. Gracias. Chao.